Alexander Chen stood in front of the mirror in his downtown Seattle penthouse, adjusting his navy blazer for the third time. His reflection showed a successful man, tall, well-dressed, with kind eyes that held traces of exhaustion. He had built a multi-million-dollar software company from scratch, but his personal life remained a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Daddy, you look nervous," came a small voice from behind him. Alexander turned to see Lucas, his 8-year-old son. Sitting cross-legged on the bed with a telescope model spread across the white comforter, the boy's dark hair fell across his forehead as he carefully assembled the tiny pieces, his movements precise and methodical. "I am nervous, buddy," Alexander admitted, sitting beside his son. "Remember what we talked about? Today is different from other days?" Lucas nodded without looking up from his telescope. "You're taking me on your date because you want to see if the lady likes me too, not just pretends to like me." The honesty in his son's voice made Alexander's chest tighten. Since his wife Maria had passed away 3 years ago, Alexander had tried dating exactly 4 times. Each woman had either looked at Lucas with pity, tried too hard to be his friend, or simply ignored the boy's presence entirely. The last woman had actually suggested that Lucas stay with a babysitter next time so the adults could talk properly. Comet had led Alexander to Dr. Sarah Kim, Lucas's therapist, who had made an unusual suggestion. "Bring Lucas with you," she had said during their last session. "Not to every date, but to the important ones. If someone can't accept and genuinely connect with Lucas, they can't truly be part of your life. Let him be your guide." Children with autism often have incredible instincts about people's true intentions. The Science Museum encounter, Pacific Science Museum, buzzed with afternoon activity as families explored interactive exhibits and children's laughter echoed through the halls. Alexander had chosen the museum cafe deliberately and neutral, comfortable environment where Lucas would feel at ease. They arrived 15 minutes early, claiming a table near the large windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Lucas immediately pulled out his astronomy book and began reading about Saturn's moons, occasionally sharing facts with his father. "Daddy, did you know that Titan has lakes made of liquid methane? It's like an alien world right in our solar system." "That's amazing, Lucas. Maybe you can tell our friend about it when she arrives." Alexander checked his phone nervously. Martinez, a mutual friend who worked as a matchmaker, had arranged this meeting with someone she described as perfect for your situation, but not in the way you'd expect. She had refused to share more details, only saying that Emma Rodriguez was 28, worked with children, and had specifically requested to meet somewhere fun and educational. At exactly 3 o'clock, a young woman with curly brown hair and bright green eyes approached their table. She wore a simple sunflower yellow dress and carried a canvas bag decorated with hand-painted butterflies. Her smile was warm and genuine as she looked between Alexander and Lucas. "You must be Alexander," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Emma Rodriguez, and this handsome gentleman has to be Lucas." Lucas looked up from his book, studying her with the intense gaze that often made adults uncomfortable. Instead of the usual awkward smile and forced enthusiasm, Emma simply waited, giving him space to process. "Do you know about Saturn?" Lucas asked suddenly. "I know it has beautiful rings made of ice and rock," Emma replied, pulling out a chair. "And sitting down, I know it has a moon called Titan that's bigger than Mercury. Is that what you're reading about?" Lucas's eyes widened with surprise and delight. "Yes. And Titan has weather patterns and seasons just like Earth, except they last 7 Earth years because Saturn takes so long to orbit the sun." Emma nodded seriously. 7 years for one season? That means if you were born in Titan's spring, you'd be just starting Titan's summer now. It's incredible to think about. Alexander watched this exchange with growing amazement. Emma wasn't talking down to Lucas or pretending to understand concepts she didn't. She was engaging with genuine curiosity, asking follow-up questions that showed she was truly listening. "Testing waters? Would you like some hot chocolate?" Alexander offered as a server approached their table. "It sounds perfect," Emma said. "Lucas, what's your favorite drink here?" "Apple juice, but not the kind with too much sugar. Daddy always checks the ingredients because some artificial sweeteners make me feel weird." "That's very smart of your dad," Emma replied. I try to avoid artificial stuff too. My grandmother always said if you can't pronounce an ingredient, maybe you shouldn't eat it. As they waited for their drinks, Emma pulled out a small sketchbook from her bag. Lucas, would it be okay if I drew while we talked? I think better with my hands busy. Lucas nodded enthusiastically. What do you draw? Lots of things. People, animals, sometimes the feelings I can't put into words. She began sketching with quick, confident strokes. What do you like to build? Besides telescopes, robots, bridges, space stations? Last week I built a Mars habitat with Legos that could actually protect people from radiation. Radiation protection? That's serious engineering. How did you figure out what materials to use? Alexander listened as his son launched into a detailed explanation of his research process, complete with references to NASA articles and YouTube videos. Emma asked thoughtful questions and even suggested improvements, treating Lucas's project with the respect it deserved. When their drinks arrived, Emma showed Lucas her sketch, a detailed drawing of him building something that looked like a cross between a telescope and a rocket ship, with Saturn visible in the background. You drew Saturn exactly right, Lucas said, studying the picture. Most people make the rings too thick or forget that there are gaps between them. I spent a lot of time looking at astronomy pictures when I was your age, Emma explained. Dad and I used to go stargazing every clear night. He taught me that space is like the ultimate art gallery, everything beautiful and perfectly designed. Alexander found himself leaning forward, drawn into the conversation. What made you interested in art therapy? Emma's expression softened. I worked with kids who had trouble expressing their emotions through words. Became a bridge, a way for them to show me their inner worlds. Every child has something amazing inside them. Sometimes they just need a different language to share it. She looked at Lucas, who was now examining her sketchbook with fascination. Lucas, do you ever draw your inventions before you build them? Sometimes, but I'm not very good at drawing. There's no such thing as not being good at drawing. There's only drawing in your own style. Would you like to try drawing your Mars habitat? I'd love to see how you imagine it. For the next hour, the three of them sat together, drawing, talking, and sharing stories. Lucas explained his latest inventions, while Emma sketched his ideas, making them come alive on paper. Alexander found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't experienced in years. As the afternoon light began to fade, Emma gathered her things. You both for such a wonderful time. Lucas, you've taught me so much about space today. Will we see you again? Lucas asked, his voice hopeful. Emma looked at Alexander, then back at Lucas. I'd like that very much. Maybe next time we could visit the planetarium. I hear they have a new show about Saturn. Alexander felt something shift in his chest. A warmth he'd almost forgotten existed. That sounds perfect. Lucas would love that. As Emma walked away, Lucas turned to his father with a serious expression. Daddy, I like her. She listened to me like my ideas were important. Alexander watched Emma disappear into the crowd, already planning their next meeting. For the first time in 3 years, he felt hope that maybe, just maybe, they could become a family again. I like her too, buddy. I like her too. The Planetarium Adventuretta weeks had passed since their first meeting. Alexander found himself looking forward to Saturday afternoons in a way he hadn't experienced since Maria's passing. Emma had kept her promise about the planetarium, and today marked their third outing together. The Pacific Science Center's planetarium was Lucas's favorite place in the entire city. As they settled into the plush seats under the dome-shaped ceiling, Lucas practically vibrated with excitement. They're showing the new Saturn documentary. Today, he whispered to Emma, his voice filled with anticipation. It has real images from the Cassini spacecraft. Emma smiled, adjusting her position so Lucas could see better. I brought my sketchbook. Maybe I can draw some of the images we see today. Alexander watched this simple exchange with growing warmth. Emma never made promises she couldn't keep, and she always remembered the small details that mattered to Lucas. When his son had mentioned loving glow-in-the-dark stars during their last meeting, she had arrived today with a small packet of star stickers for him to take home. As the lights dimmed and the narrator's voice filled the space, Alexander found himself watching Emma and Lucas more than the spectacular images overhead. Emma sketched quickly in the darkness, capturing the swirling clouds of Jupiter and the delicate ice crystals of Saturn's rings. Lucas provided a running commentary in hushed whispers, sharing facts he'd learned from his research. The Great Red Spot on Jupiter is actually a storm that's been going on for hundreds of years, he told Emma quietly. It's bigger than 3 Earths put together. That's incredible, Emma whispered back, adding details to her sketch. Imagine if Earth had a storm like that. What do you think would happen? Lucas thought seriously about this question. Well, we'd probably have to build our cities underground or in space stations. Maybe that's why we need to learn about Mars habitats in case we need backup planets. Alexander smiled in the darkness. Only Lucas would connect a Jupiter documentary to practical space colonization plans. After the show ended, they walked through the museum's space exhibit. Emma asked thoughtful questions about each display, treating Lucas like the expert he was becoming. When they reached the Mars rover replica, Lucas climbed inside the simulation and began explaining how the solar panels worked. Lucas knows more about space than most adults, Alexander told Emma as they watched his son demonstrate the rover's robotic arm. He has a gift, Emma replied. The way his mind works, seeing patterns, understanding complex systems, it's beautiful. I wish more people could see that instead of focusing on what they think he can't do. Her words hit Alexander deeply.
Oh, so?
Many people had told him what Lucas would never achieve, never understand, never be able to do. Emma was the first person outside of Dr. Kim to see Lucas's autism as part of his strength rather than something to overcome. Art and understanding following weekend. Emma invited them to her art therapy workshop at the community center. Alexander had been hesitant at first. Lucas didn't usually enjoy group activities, but Emma had assured him this would be different. The workshop space was bright and welcoming, with large windows and colorful artwork covering the walls. 5. Other children were already there, each working on individual projects with focused concentration. Everyone here understands that people's minds work differently, Emma explained to Lucas as she set up his workspace. Some kids here are really good with numbers, some with music, some with building things. We're just going to explore what colors and shapes feel like today. She placed several tubes of paint in front of Lucas, along with brushes and a large canvas. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just paint what Saturn feels like to you. Alexander watched nervously as Lucas stared at the blank canvas. His son rarely tried new activities, especially creative ones where there weren't clear rules or expected outcomes, but slowly, Lucas picked up a brush and dipped it in deep blue paint. He began with small, careful strokes, gradually building confidence as he worked. The painting that emerged was unlike anything Alexander had expected, swirling blues and purples with delicate white rings, all surrounded by tiny silver dots representing stars. This is how Saturn looks in my dreams, Lucas told Emma, stepping back to examine his work. Peaceful and far away, but still part of something bigger. Emma knelt beside him, studying the painting with genuine admiration. Lucas, this is absolutely beautiful. Look how you've captured the feeling of space, that sense of infinite possibility and quiet wonder. Other children in the workshop gathered around to see Lucas's painting. Instead of the awkward interactions Alexander usually witnessed, these kids simply appreciated each other's work without judgment or comparison. That's so cool, said Maya, a girl about Lucas's age who had been working on a sculpture. I love how you made the rings look like they're actually floating. Lucas beamed with pride. Want to see my telescope drawings? I have them in my backpack. For the next hour, Lucas shared his space knowledge with the other children while they showed him their art techniques. Alexander watched his son laugh and collaborate in ways he'd never seen before. This is amazing, Alexander told Emma as they cleaned up afterward. I've never seen him connect with other kids like this. Emma smiled, washing paintbrushes in the sink. When children feel accepted for who they are, they naturally open up. Lucas just needed a space where being different was seen as interesting rather than wrong. Growing closer as spring turned to summer, their Saturday adventures became a cherished routine. They visited the aquarium, where Lucas became fascinated with jellyfish and their simple but efficient nervous systems. They explored Pike Place Market, where Emma taught Lucas about color theory while they examined the vibrant flowers and fresh produce. During one particularly warm afternoon at Green Lake Park, Emma brought a picnic lunch and art supplies. While Lucas built an elaborate sandcastle designed like a space station, Alexander and Emma sat on a blanket watching him work. "He's changed so much since we met," Alexander observed. "More confident, more willing to try new things." "You've changed too," Emma said softly, sketching Lucas as he worked. "You seem more relaxed, more willing to let him just be himself." Alexander considered this. "I think I was so focused on protecting him from the world that I forgot to let him explore it. You've shown me that there are people who will appreciate him exactly as he is." Emma looked up from her sketchbook, meeting his eyes. "Alexander, can I tell you something?" He nodded, suddenly nervous about the serious tone in her voice. "Sophia first told me about you. She said you were a single father looking for someone who could handle your complicated situation. I almost said no, because that made it sound like Lucas was a problem to be solved." Alexander felt his stomach drop. "Emma, I never meant for it to sound like that." "I know you didn't," she said quickly, reaching over to touch his hand. "But I'm glad I came anyway, because what I found was a beautiful family that just needed someone who could see how special you both are." Her words made Alexander's chest tight with emotion. "Emma, Daddy Emma, come see this," Lucas called from his sandcastle. "I figured out how to make the gravity simulator work with just sand and water." He spent the rest of the afternoon helping Lucas perfect his space station design, but Alexander couldn't stop thinking about Emma's words. For the first time since Maria's death, he was beginning to believe that love might be possible again. As they packed up to leave, Lucas tugged on Emma's hand. "Emma, are you going to be part of our family now?" The question hung in the warm summer air as both adults looked at each other, realizing that somewhere between astronomy lessons and art projects, they had indeed become something like a family. "If that's what you both want," Emma said carefully. Looking at Alexander for confirmation, Alexander felt his heart racing as he nodded. More than anything. Lucas grinned and hugged them both. "Good, because I already drew you into all my pictures of our house." As they walked back to the car, Alexander realized that Dr. Kim had been right. Lucas had been the perfect guide all along, leading them to exactly where they needed to be. The difficult day 3 months into their relationship, Alexander received the phone call every parent dreads. Lucas had a meltdown at school, his first major one in over a year. The principal's voice was calm, but concerned, as she explained that Lucas had become overwhelmed during a fire drill and was now sitting under his desk, refusing to come out or speak to anyone. "We've tried everything we normally do," Mrs. Henderson explained, "but he keeps asking for Emma. Should we call his therapist?" Alexander's heart raced as he grabbed his keys. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. And yes, please call Emma Rodriguez. She's important to Lucas." The drive to Brookfield Elementary felt eternal. Alexander's mind raced with worry and guilt. Had he been too focused on his relationship with Emma to notice signs that Lucas was struggling? Had the changes in their routine been too much for his son to handle? When he arrived at the school, he found Emma already there, sitting cross-legged on the floor outside Lucas's classroom. She had her art supplies spread around her and was sketching quietly. "How did you get here so fast?" Alexander asked, kneeling beside her. "I was already close by visiting another student at the middle school," Emma explained, not looking up from her drawing. "Mrs. Henderson said he asked for me specifically. It's never happened before." Through the classroom window they could see Lucas still huddled under his desk, his hands pressed over his ears. His teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, sat nearby reading quietly, giving him space while staying close enough to ensure his safety. "What happened?" Alexander asked Mrs. Henderson when she joined them in the hallway. "The fire alarm malfunctioned during lunch," she explained. "Instead of the usual controlled drill, it went off unexpectedly and much louder than normal." Lucas was in the middle of explaining Saturn's moons to his table mates when it happened. He immediately covered his ears and ran back to the classroom. Alexander felt a familiar pang of helplessness. Fire drills had always been difficult for Lucas, but they'd practiced coping strategies that usually worked. An unexpected, extra loud alarm would have been overwhelming for his sensitive hearing. "Can I try talking to him?" Emma asked, standing up and brushing off her skirt. The school counselor and I have both tried, Mrs. Henderson said gently. He's not responding to anyone right now. I understand, Emma replied, but sometimes a different approach helps. Would it be okay if I just sat near him? I won't force conversation. Alexander watched as Emma entered the classroom with her sketchbook and a small box of colored pencils. She settled on the floor about 6 feet from Lucas's desk and began drawing, humming softly under her breath. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Lucas remained curled under his desk while Emma sketched peacefully nearby. Alexander fought the urge to intervene, trusting Emma's instincts, even though his parental anxiety was overwhelming. Then, slowly, Lucas peeked out from under the desk. Emma didn't acknowledge this directly, but she shifted her drawing so he could see it better. It was a detailed sketch of Saturn with all its moons labeled, surrounded by a protective force. Field that kept out scary sounds and overwhelming situations. Is that like a soundproof space station? Lucas asked quietly, his first words since the incident. Exactly like that, Emma replied, continuing to add details. It's a special station, where only gentle sounds are allowed in. Space explorers go there when Earth gets too noisy. Lucas crawled out from under the desk and sat beside Emma, studying her drawing. Could we build one in real life? Right. We could definitely design one, Emma said, offering him a pencil. Want to help me figure out how the sound protection would work? Alexander watched his son gradually relax as he worked with Emma on their imaginary space station. Within an hour, Lucas was back to his normal self, even agreeing to return to the cafeteria to finish his lunch. How did you know that would work? Alexander asked Emma as they walked to the parking lot later. Art therapy isn't just about making pictures, Emma explained. It's about creating safe spaces for people to process difficult experiences. Lucas needed to feel in control again, and designing solutions helps him do that. That evening, as they tucked Lucas into bed, he looked up at both of them with serious eyes. Emma, will you still want to be with us even when I have bad days? Emma sat on the edge of his bed and smoothed his hair. Lucas, everyone has difficult days. What matters is how we take care of each other when that happens. You're stuck with me, whether you're having good days or challenging ones. Promise. Promise. The business challenge the following week brought an unexpected test for Alexander and Emma's relationship. During a board meeting for his company, Alexander's business partner and oldest friend, Michael Wong, raised concerns about Alexander's personal choices affecting his professional judgment. Alex, I need to be direct with you, Michael said after the other board members had left. Some of our investors are asking questions about your girlfriend and her background. Alexander felt his jaw tighten. What kind of questions? They're concerned that someone without an elite education or established social connections might not be appropriate for someone in your position. The Henderson deal fell through last week, and they're wondering if your distraction with this relationship played a role. The Henderson deal had fallen through due to market conditions completely unrelated to Alexander's personal life. And Michael knew it. Alexander also understood the underlying message. His relationship with Emma was being seen as a liability. Michael, Emma is an art therapist with 2 degrees and more emotional intelligence than half our board combined. What exactly is inappropriate about that? Come on, Alex. You know how this world works. Image matters. Donors and investors expect a certain type of partner at company events. Someone who understands high-stakes business, who can navigate those social circles. Alexander felt a familiar anger rising, the same feeling he'd experienced whenever someone suggested Lucas would never be normal enough for mainstream success. You're asking me to choose between the woman I love and business relationships? Michael's expression softened slightly. I'm asking you to think carefully about what's best for everyone, including Lucas. You've built something incredible here. Don't let personal feelings jeopardize that. That evening, Alexander sat in his home office staring at financial reports. Without seeing them, Emma was in the living room helping Lucas with a science project, their laughter floating through the closed door. The sound usually brought him comfort, but tonight it highlighted the growing tension between his two worlds. When Emma knocked softly and entered with a cup of coffee, Alexander looked up at her with troubled eyes. Bad day at the office? She asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. Alexander found himself explaining the conversation with Michael, watching Emma's expression grow more guarded with each word. "I see," she said quietly when he finished. "And what do you think?" "I think Michael is wrong about you, but he might be right about the business implications. These people, they judge everything. How you dress, where you went to school, what your parents did for work. It's shallow and unfair, but it's reality." Alec nodded slowly. "Alexander, can I ask you something honestly?" "Of course." "You embarrassed by me?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "Emma, no, absolutely not. You're the most genuine, intelligent, caring person I've ever met. But you're worried about what other people think." Alexander couldn't deny it. "I'm worried about protecting what we've built. The company, our financial security, Lucas's future. If I lose credibility in the business world, it affects all of that." Emma stood up, her expression sad but understanding. "I need to think about this, Alexander. I won't be the reason you have to choose between love and security. That's not fair to any of us, especially Lucas." Love's true test the next morning was Saturday, their usual adventure day with Lucas. But the atmosphere was tense as they drove to the Children's Museum. Lucas, with his uncanny ability to sense emotional undercurrents, was quieter than usual. "Are you and Emma having a fight?" he asked Alexander during lunch. "Not a fight exactly," Alexander said carefully. "Just some grown-up things we need to figure out." Lucas considered this seriously. "Is it because of your work friends?" Alexander was startled by his son's perceptiveness. "What makes you say that?" "I heard you talking on the phone yesterday. Someone said Emma wasn't good enough for us." Lucas's voice was matter-of-fact, but Alexander could see hurt in his eyes. "Lucas, Emma is absolutely good enough for us. Perfect for us. Then why are you sad?" Before Alexander could answer, Emma returned from the gift shop with a small telescope kit for Lucas. As she presented it to him, Lucas looked between both adults with his serious, analytical expression. "Emma," he said carefully, "some people think you're not fancy enough for Daddy because you don't have lots of money or fancy clothes." Emma knelt to Lucas's level. "That's right, sweetheart. Some people do think that. But that's stupid," Lucas said with the brutal honesty only children possess. "You're the smartest person I know except for Daddy, and you're the nicest person I know, including Daddy." Emma laughed, despite the tension. "Thank you, Lucas. That means everything to me." Lucas turned to his father with determination. "Daddy, remember what you told me about standing up to bullies at school?" "Yes." "You said that if someone tries to make you feel bad about being different, you should be proud of who you are and find people who appreciate you for yourself." Alexander felt his chest tighten as his 8-year-old son held up a mirror to his own advice. "You also said that the people who really matter will love you no matter what. The people who don't love you for yourself don't deserve to be in your life." Emma wiped away a tear, looking at Alexander with something between hope and resignation. "Lucas is right," Alexander said finally. "I've been so worried about what other people think that I forgot what actually matters." He took Emma's hands in his. "Emma, you make us better people. You've helped Lucas become more confident and helped me remember how to be happy. If my business partners can't see how incredible you are, then they're not the kind of people I want to work with anyway." "But your company," Emma started. "The company will be fine. I've built something strong enough to survive some narrow-minded investors. And if it's not, then we'll build something better." Lucas grinned and hugged them both. "Does this mean Emma gets to stay forever?" Alexander looked at Emma, seeing his own hope reflected in her eyes. "If she wants to." "More than anything," Emma whispered. 6 months later, Alexander started his own consulting firm with a mission to make technology more accessible for children with different learning styles. Emma became his first full-time employee, developing art therapy programs for their young clients. Lucas, now 9, was their unofficial chief innovation officer, testing every product and providing feedback that consistently impressed their adult clients. The day they moved into their new shared home, Lucas hung his drawing of Saturn's protective space station in the living room window. "Now everyone can see that we're safe inside our own force field," he explained to anyone who asked. They were. Together they had created exactly the kind of family they'd each dreamed of, one built on acceptance, understanding, and the kind of love that sees beauty in difference rather than problems to be solved. Michael Wong eventually apologized and became one of their first clients. As he watched Lucas explain accessible design principles to a room full of engineers, he told Alexander, "You were right. I couldn't see what was right in front of me." Alexander smiled, watching Emma guide. Lucas threw a presentation about making video games more inclusive for children with sensory sensitivities. "The best things in life," he replied, "are usually right in front of us. We just have to be brave enough to choose love over fear." And in that moment, surrounded by his unconventional but perfect family, Alexander Chen knew he had made exactly the right choice.